If you found this video after maybe another failed diet, or you're looking for a solution to those never-ending thoughts of not feeling like you've got enough willpower or discipline to stick to your healthy eating plans, then this is a perfect video for you, where I'll be introducing the wonderful framework of intuitive eating that offers you a way out of dieting and stepping back into a much more powerful version of yourself that's rooted in relearning how to trust your body and improve your health without diets and without having to count calories and without having to keep restricting food and letting food really consume all your thoughts. And who am I to be talking about all things intuitive eating? My name's Georgina and I'm a certified intuitive eating counsellor. I spent nearly 2 decades dieting, and the result of that was really complete exhaustion and not really getting where I wanted to be as a result of doing those diets. They didn't improve my health, they didn't improve my well-being, they didn't improve my body image. In actual fact, they made all of those things 10 times worse. And I was left with lots of disordered eating patterns and low self-esteem. So if you're feeling like that at the moment, then I know exactly how you're feeling, because I've been there myself many times over the years. And for me, I had a final straw moment where I just thought, I can't do another diet. I just can't do it again. And that was my turning point for change. And with that realization, I found the intuitive eating framework that's designed by two incredible dietitians called Evelyn Tribbley and Elise Resch. It's self-care based and it's evidence based, and it completely transformed my health and my life in every way. And so I'm really passionate about sharing this work with other women. Maybe you're feeling like this at the moment watching this video, so that I can give you hope that there is a different way to care for your health without having to be stuck on that roller coaster of restriction and guilt and dieting. So, does this sound like you? Another diet starts and another diet's been abandoned. You might find yourself thinking about food all day, feeling guilty after eating, and maybe still waiting to feel back in control again around food. And you may just be completely exhausted by the cycle of restriction and guilt every time you eat something. But it's really important to know that you're not failing at dieting at all. In fact, diets were never really going to work, and it's the diets that have failed you. So that might be something that you've never heard said before. It's not really something that's really talked about a lot out there in society, but it's so important to meet yourself with some compassion when you're new to this framework, and consider that what if you hadn't failed anything at all with your dieting attempts, and actually it's the diets that have failed you. And does this sound familiar? You might be just really, really tired with being preoccupied with food, as it consumes your valuable time and zaps your energy. This was definitely me. And you might desire an alternative way of relating to food, eating, and your body, and perhaps one that's characterized by kindness rather than criticism. And again, that could be really quite powerful to sit with, and it might even be a little bit triggering for you. So take what resonates, and leave what doesn't for now. You can always come back to it at a future point. But diets are often rooted in a lot of criticism and unkindness to yourself. And one of the great things about intuitive eating is that it helps us to recultivate a sense of kindness towards ourselves, which is so important for caring for our health physically, mentally, and emotionally. So, as I've said, intuitive eating is a really powerful evidence based self care framework, and it was designed by these incredible dietitians called Evelyn Tribbley and Elise Resch back in the 1990s. And since then, it's really grown hugely in popularity and in credibility, even though it was already such a credible theory when it was first devised. There's been such interest in it over the last 30 years that a lot of academic studies have been done, published journals and things like that, which has only added to its validity and the amazing results that can be achieved by going through the framework yourself. And to date, there's now over 350 published studies on intuitive eating, which is amazing. And there's more than 2,000 certified intuitive eating counsellors worldwide, just like myself. And one of the key pieces of information to take on board when you're looking at intuitive eating is it's really rooted in an understanding that we are all born intuitive eaters. So we're all born to be able to tune into what our body's needs are. And actually, diet culture ultimately is what is the main barrier that teaches us to stop listening to those internal inbuilt cues and wisdom that we're all born with. So, of those studies that I've just mentioned, what the sort of overarching themes are that makes a really clear picture of the benefits of intuitive eating is that you generally come away with a lot lower sense of body dissatisfaction. If you struggle with binge and emotional eating, and I struggled with both of these, then that decreases, or with binge eating can become completely healed as a result of this work. Disordered eating patterns, so things like overeating and again binge eating, emotional eating on a milder scale where it's not diagnosed as an eating disorder, they can all be beautifully healed with this work. Those thoughts of food preoccupation and anxiety around food will decrease as a result of this work. And then a thing called internalized weight bias improves remarkably by doing this work. So, what that means is that you become a lot more able to separate your understanding of weight and health so that you can approach your health independently of using weight as a marker for health, which often makes sort of health anxiety and health attempts worse by focusing on external measures such as weight. And what you'll bring more of into your life as a result of this work is increased body appreciation and trust, increased self-esteem, well-being and optimism, increased pleasure from eating, an increased variety of foods enjoyed without guilt. And if you do experience emotional eating regularly, then you will find that you're a lot more proactive in looking at what's driving the emotional eating and finding non-food based coping strategies to support you that are more helpful than relying on food is. And then another couple of benefits that aren't mentioned in this slide are some physical markers. So things like blood pressure have been shown to improve with this work, cholesterol levels, blood sugar levels. So there's some really fantastic physical markers as well that have been shown to sort of make great improvements by following this framework and essentially stepping off the diet cycle and stepping more into a attuned peace and wisdom in your eating choices and connecting back in to those inbuilt cues that we're all born with. So it's a really exciting time for this work in terms of what all this research has showed. And I would say with my own benefits, I have improved with all of these aspects, all of them. And more. So it really is absolutely fantastic. What to expect from intuitive eating? A big question that most women ask when they come to this work is what will happen to their weight because they'd like to lose weight. And this work goes much deeper than that, but it's really important to acknowledge that wanting to lose weight is a completely understandable desire. If you've been on diets for a long time, usually the goal is always rooted in weight loss, and the messaging out there in the world is all about weight loss. So it really, really makes sense that that might be a starting point that feels really important to you. And there's no shame in that at all. What this work does is it asks for something more than a number on the scale, in terms of looking at all the different ways that you can support your health that are more important than a number. So we're looking at reframing your beliefs around weight and what it means to you, and then ultimately replacing that with more relevant factors. So ultimately looking at how you want to feel as the anchor point rather than what you weigh. And that can be a process that just takes you whatever time that does to loosen the grip of weight so that you can replace it with more valuable, supportive ways of thinking. I weighed myself a lot when I first came to this work because that's what I'd always done. And there are fantastic tools to help you work through that desire and work through that grip that the scale may have on you. So you don't just have to throw away the scales and never think about your weight again, because sometimes that can make things feel worse. But what we want to do is really sort of start to examine what weight means to you and why, so we can unravel it to give you something that actually feels more empowering, that to guide you to your better health. And often what the research shows is that the more focus there is on weight, actually the more that tends to backfire in the long run in terms of what you're wanting to achieve with tuning back into your body. So it becomes a barrier to listening to your body and to really supporting it and making these changes to your physical, mental, and emotional health. So what this work will ask of you when it comes to weight is to really have compassion for yourself and also be willing to practice and have patience as you learn all the intuitive eating principles and apply them. And then you're able to loosen that grip of weight and how that's affecting the way that you eat and think about food, so that we're replacing it with something that really just makes more sense in the long run, that will give you a lot more success with your health. And so the 10 principles are the guidelines to having this more peaceful and healthful relationship with food and your body. And so I'll just briefly run through them. So you can do the principles in any order. There's a book and a workbook if you just want to get started independently. But in summary, we're looking at rejecting the diet mentality. So a little bit more beyond what this video covers in terms of the roots of diet culture and how it shapes our thoughts about food and ourselves. Then looking at tuning back in with hunger cues, so relearning how to honour our hunger rather than rely on calories or external rules to tell us what and when to eat. Then we're looking at making peace with food, so any sort of cravings and desires that we have around food that can make us feel out of control. So this was me a lot with binge eating and emotional eating. We're looking at understanding why those sort of putting food on a pedestal can create such a difficult relationship with it and how to heal that. And number 4, challenge the food police, sort of sits within the same understanding of looking at where our food rules come from and how they sabotage us ultimately in creating the health that we desire, and then how to reframe those rules to allow us to eat more peacefully and be much more in touch with what truly satisfies us in eating, so that it doesn't feel like foods are either on a plan or off a plan, so to speak. And then this one here, number 5, discovering the satisfaction factor. So actually letting yourself eat foods that you truly enjoy. And over time, that has been shown to actually reduce episodes of overeating rather than increase those episodes when combined with all these principles together, with this shift in mindset that you'll experience as an intuitive eater. And then, like with number 2 of the 10 principles, honouring your hunger, you'll also learn how to feel your fullness, number 6. So being able to tune back into those physical and mental signs of hunger and fullness to be able to regulate your appetite without any restriction or without any rules, but more leaning into those physiological cues that we're born with. that we can tap back into, which is fantastic and a real game changer, and often is a really good starting point for this work if you just want to get into it straight away with some practical pieces to sort of see how it feels. Then hunger and fullness cues can be a really nice starting point. And then principle seven is dedicated just to emotions. So, what drives emotional eating, what it really is, and how to support yourself without turning to food every single time that you might feel a difficult emotion. And then principle eight is called respect your body. And so that's about body image and looking at cultivating a more neutral approach to health and to your body. And what I love about this principle, and it changed so much for me in my own experience with this framework, is that you don't have to love your body to respect it. This work's just about cultivating a neutral approach, and that can feel so freeing when you know that there isn't a goal that's tied to something that feels often impossible, especially when you first come to this work. And I have got another video just about that aspect of the work, which I think is the one before this. So if you want to go and have a look at that, it's got some practices to get you started. So I would highly recommend having a look at that if that's something that you're currently dealing with and you'd like to start working with that now. And then number nine is moving your body with joy. So we're looking at joyful movement rather than moving your body for punishment, which is again often where you might be with your relationship with movement if you've been on lots of diets. I know in my dieting history, movement was always associated with a chore really, and it was to burn calories and things like that. So to reframe it into something that feels more enjoyable and that's sort of more empowering is again a really lovely principle to work with. And then the last one, number 10, last but by no means least, is honouring your health with gentle nutrition. So that one really breaks down what effective nutrition looks like, but without coming from a place of, again, restriction or telling you what you should and shouldn't eat. So that one's often best approached when you've done quite a bit of work on the other principles so that you've got a more supportive relationship, you've done some healing. Then number 10 comes in really beautifully because it still acknowledges the great importance of nutrition. But then by that point, you'll have the flexibility to take on the nutrition guidance without sort of turning it into another set of rules. So it really completes the picture by the time you get to that principle. So a really, really great framework that covers everything you could possibly need to set yourself up for success. And so just as we've finished this video, there's a really lovely example called the spiral of healing, which is sort of part of the intuitive eating work and the mindset, and about looking at how progress moves upwards rather than in a straight line. So if you're healing from a difficult relationship with food, it's not just going to go from A to B to C in a straight line. You'll have experiences that feel a little bit like a spiral. So as you go through the work, you will find that there's places of ease, and then you'll find that there's places that feel a little bit more difficult. And so you might feel as though at times, oh, I wasn't expecting this to come up with the work I'm doing, and you might think, oh, I feel a bit stuck, and then you'll have a breakthrough and you'll move forwards again. And every experience you have is a really good practice not to look at any of it as a failure, but literally as an experience. So an opportunity to be curious about your patterns and why you feel the way you feel. In the examples of the work that you'll be doing, and everything's an opportunity to take learning from it and apply it for the next practice that you do. And so just to sort of summarize that, when you're on the spiral of healing, nothing is a setback. They're all just learning experiences so that you can reflect with curiosity and really practice non judgment. And as you keep going, eventually you will get to this lovely place of being really, really peaceful around food and your body. And it is a fantastic place to be. So, just to finish on this video, my slides keep whizzing away. I've got one question for you to finish the video, which is, what is your why? So, if this video's resonated with you and you're thinking, oh, could this be something that might work for me? Then a really good starting place is to ask yourself, why might you start to make some changes now to how you're approaching food and your body? And we can often look into what's brought us to this place. So usually it's coming from a place of doing lots of diets. And could you reflect on two or three powerful reasons that it might be time to let go of diet culture? So what would be helpful for you about no longer participating in dieting? And how would you like to feel instead? So, what would feel good for you? How would you see yourself, say, in 6 months or 12 months down the line? How would you like to be feeling around food? So, an example could be that you want your life back. You know, for lots of people, and this was myself included, food can take over your life, and so that might be a why. You might want, food and body freedom. You might want better body image. It could be something more specific, that you want to be free of binge eating, that you want to be free of emotional eating. There's lots of different things, so make it personal to you. And if you'd happy to comment below, I'd love to hear what's come up for you with that question. And if you're thinking this all sounds great and I'd actually like to do some more work on this, then you are very welcome to join me in my wonderful free community called Nourish Your Soul Society. And so this will offer you a guided path back to your body and back home to yourself. And inside there, you'll get a monthly live Q&A with me, a wonderful mini course to get you started on your journey, which is called Why Can't I Stop Eating? Because that is, again, a common frustration that people that I work with face. You can get started immediately and you'll start to see improvements very, very quickly. And then there's a load of free resources and videos in the community as well. And then also like-minded people that will make you feel like you're part of a team, so you're not on your own with your thoughts. And then you'll have me there as well to guide you and support you in whatever way I can. So I hope you found that lovely and interesting. And the link's in the description below if you'd like to join the community. And I will look forward to seeing you in there, and I will see you in the next video.